The humid air of New Orleans always clung to me, a constant, heavy embrace that smelled of chicory coffee, old bricks, and the distant, muddy Mississippi. It was home, and it was also a burden. At 29, I, Maria Rodriguez, was doing my best to make a life for myself and my little girl, Sophia. Every morning, the sun would pour through the tall windows of our shotgun house in the Bywater, waking me before my alarm even had a chance. I'd slip out of bed, careful not to wake Sophia, and head to the small kitchen for a cup of strong coffee. Those quiet moments before the city truly woke up, before Sophia's cheerful chatter filled the rooms, were my only real peace. My days were a blur of work. I managed a small, bustling bakery not far from the French market, and then the dash to pick up Sophia from school. She was 7, all bright eyes and a quick laugh, and seeing her face after a long day always made my chest ache with love. She was my everything, the reason I pushed through the exhaustion and the constant worry about making ends meet. My parents, God rest their souls, had taught me resilience, a stubborn kind of strength that New Orleans seemed to breed in its people. I needed every bit of it, especially lately. Lately meant Marcus. Marcus had been in my life for the past 2 years, a whirlwind of charm and promises that often felt too good to be true. He was handsome, charismatic, and when he was good, he was really good. He could make me laugh until my sides hurt, and he was sweet with Sophia, which meant the world to me. But there was another side to him, a restless, unpredictable energy that always left me feeling a little off-kilter. A couple of months ago, that unpredictable side had truly surfaced, tearing a hole right through my trust. He'd gone out with another woman, a girl he swore was just a friend from work. He'd lied, said he was working late, and I found out later through a mutual acquaintance. Betrayal had stung deep, a cold, sharp pain that settled right in my heart and made me question everything. He apologized, of course, swore it was a mistake, a moment of weakness. And like an idiot, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe in the Marcus who brought me flowers and played silly games with Sophia, not the one who could so easily deceive me. I tried to move past it, to rebuild what he'd broken. But the truth was, a part of me remained guarded, always expecting the next blow. I started noticing things, little things, how he'd check his phone constantly, how he'd sometimes avoid my gaze when I asked about his day. My insecurity, already a quiet hum in the background, began to grow louder, turning into a nagging voice that whispered doubts in my ear. Was he still talking to other girls? Was I not enough? This fear, this constant knot of anxiety, led me to do something I now deeply regretted. I started texting other guys, mostly old friends, some random acquaintances from social media. Harmless chats, really nothing serious. Just a way to feel seen, I guess, to feel like someone else might find me interesting, even if it was just for a fleeting moment. It was a desperate, misguided attempt to soothe the ache of feeling disposable, a foolish reaction to his betrayal. I knew it wasn't right, even as I was doing it. Then came last Saturday. It was a stiflingly hot afternoon, even for New Orleans in the late spring. Marcus, Sophia, and I were on our way back from a day trip to the swamp where we'd seen alligators and Sophia had squealed with delight. We stopped at a gas station on the outskirts of the city. My bladder was protesting, so I told Marcus I'd be quick and handed my phone to Sophia. She loved playing the little puzzle games on it, a distraction for her while I took a moment of peace. I didn't think anything of it. I never did. The bathroom was blessedly cool, but the relief was short-lived. When I came back out, Marcus was standing by the car, not leaning against it casually like he usually did, but standing stiffly, his shoulders hunched. Sophia was in the backseat, still engrossed in her game, oblivious. Marcus's face was a mask I didn't recognize. His eyes, usually warm, were cold and distant. In his hand, he held my phone. My stomach plummeted. I knew instantly what had happened. He had gone through it, my breath caught in my throat. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He looked at me, his gaze cutting through me like a bayou wind. "I went through your phone, Maria." His voice was flat, emotionless. "Saw your chats with other guys." A wave of shame washed over me, hot and sickening. My cheeks flushed and I couldn't meet his eyes. I felt exposed, caught, and utterly stupid. The irony wasn't lost on me. He had cheated, and here I was, feeling guilty for a few meaningless texts. But my guilt was real, a heavy weight in my chest. I opened my mouth to explain, to apologize, to scream at him for invading my privacy, but no words came out. He continued, his voice still unnervingly calm. "I'm not mad, Maria, I know my place." He paused, and a small, almost imperceptible shake of his head followed. "I'm going to distance myself. I can't do this anymore." My heart sank further, if that was even possible. Not mad, just knows his place? What did that even mean? It sounded like something he'd rehearsed, a line to throw at me that made him sound like the wronged party, the noble one. It was so confusing. He was the one who had cheated first. He was the one who had shattered our trust. And now, my stupid, insecure reaction was somehow being used to put the blame back on me, to make me feel like the one who was truly at fault. The air around us felt thick with unspoken accusations and his baffling, cold detachment. I tried again. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I did it. It was stupid, I know. My voice cracked. The words felt hollow, inadequate to explain the mess in my head. He just looked away, focusing on the distant highway. It's fine, Maria, I get it, we're done. But then he turned back, a strange flicker in his eyes. I still want to talk to you, though, about Sophia and about things. My mind reeled. Done, but still wants to talk? What kind of twisted game was this? My guilt was still churning, but now it was mixed with a growing sense of frustration and anger. He had done far worse, yet he was acting like the victim, leaving me completely disoriented. It was a classic Marcus move, I realized, to keep me on a string, unsure of where I stood. To make me feel like I deserved this confusing, painful limbo. As we drove the rest of the way home in strained silence, Sophia humming a tune from her game, I couldn't shake the feeling of being completely adrift. My chest was tight, my thoughts racing. I felt guilty, yes, for my foolish texts, but I also felt used, manipulated. He had cheated on me, broken my heart, and then, when I reacted out of insecurity, he had turned it all back on me, leaving me in this tangled mess of blame and confusion. What was I supposed to do now? How could I untangle myself from this web he'd so skillfully spun? The New Orleans night, usually so comforting, now felt suffocating, reflecting the storm brewing inside of me. I was Maria Rodriguez, a mother, a bakery manager, and now a woman utterly lost in a situation I barely understood, seeking a path through the emotional wreckage. It felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, and Marcus had just given me a gentle, polite shove, but I wasn't ready to fall. Not yet. The days that followed were a blur of restless nights and forced smiles. Marcus's words echoed in my head, a confusing loop of I'm not mad, and I know my place, followed by the chilling we're done, and then the baffling I still want to talk to you. It was like he was trying to tie me in knots, and he was succeeding. I felt like a puppet, with invisible strings being tugged in every direction. He started his distancing in a way that was anything but distant. He wouldn't come over to the house anymore, which was a small relief from the tension, but his phone calls became more frequent, more intense. They were always about Sophia, or so he claimed. Did Sophia eat her vegetables? Is she doing okay in school? Innocent questions on the surface, but underneath I could feel the invisible threads tightening. He'd text me late at night, a simple thinking about you, or hope you're okay, which would throw me into a fresh spiral of confusion. Was he trying to reconcile? Was he just messing with my head? I didn't know, and that not knowing was eating me alive. I tried to talk to him to get some clarity. I invited him for coffee one afternoon, choosing a quiet spot near the bakery, hoping the neutral territory would help. He showed up, looking tired but still annoyingly handsome. I looked at him across the small table, the steam from our coffees rising between us, and my heart ached with the lingering affection I still held for the man I thought he was. Marcus, I started, my voice soft. I'm still so sorry about the texts. It was stupid. I reacted badly because I was hurt, because of what happened with that other girl. I watched his face, searching for a sign of understanding, a flicker of the old Marcus. He just sighed, a heavy, theatrical sound. Maria, I told you, I'm not mad. I just can't be with someone who's talking to other guys behind my back. It's a matter of respect, you know? I deserve better than that. He made it sound so reasonable, so logical, as if his own betrayal had never happened. It was a verbal sleight of hand, twisting the narrative so that I was the sole perpetrator. My throat tightened. But you cheated first, Marcus. That's why I was insecure. That's why I did it. I tried to bring it back to the beginning, to the root of the problem. He leaned back, a faint, dismissive smile playing on his lips. That was different, Maria. That was a mistake. We talked about that. This was you actively seeking out other men. You don't think that hurts? You don't think that makes me feel like I'm not enough? The words hit me like small, sharp stones. He was flipping it, making himself the victim of my insecurity rather than the cause of it. He was a master at it, I realized. He had this way of making me feel like I was crazy for even bringing up his past actions, as if they were irrelevant compared to my recent transgression. He had found my vulnerability, my guilt, and he was twisting the knife. So, what does this mean? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Are we over? Are we not? Why do you still call me, text me? He looked away, out the window at the bustling street. I care about you, Maria, and Sophia. I'll always be there for Sophia, But as for us, I need space. I need to heal from this. He used words like heal and space as weapons, making it sound like he was the one who needed recovery from my actions. I left that coffee shop feeling even more confused and defeated than when I walked in. My head pounded. He had successfully tied me in an even tighter knot, leaving me desperate for his approval, still believing, deep down, that if I just apologized enough, if I just understood his pain enough, he would come back. This emotional tug-of-war started to bleed into every aspect of my life. At the bakery, my usually sharp focus wavered. I'd find myself staring blankly at the rising dough, my mind replaying Marcus's words, trying to decipher their true meaning. My coworkers, a mix of seasoned bakers and aspiring artists, noticed my quietness. They'd ask if everything was okay, and I'd offer a vague, just tired or stress at home. I didn't want to burden them with the messy truth of my love life. Sophia, bless her innocent heart, was the only one who seemed untouched by the storm. She'd ask about her dad, and I'd tell her he was busy with work, that he'd call soon. The lies tasted bitter on my tongue, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth, not yet. I wanted to protect her, to shield her from the complexities and cruelties of adult relationships. One evening Marcus called. It was late, after Sophia was asleep. He sounded different, almost tender. "Maria," he said, his voice low, "I was thinking about us, about what we had." My heart fluttered, a foolish bird catching hope. "I miss you." My breath hitched. "I miss you too, Marcus," I admitted, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "I know," he said, his voice dropping even lower. "But I just can't get past this. The thought of you with other guys, even just texting, it kills me. It shows me you don't respect me, and respect is everything." And just like that, the small flicker of hope was extinguished, replaced by the familiar cold dread. He had dangled the carrot, only to snatch it away, leaving me to stare at the empty space where it had been. This was his game, I realized. He would reel me in, make me vulnerable, and then wound me again, all while professing his hurt. It was a cruel, endless cycle. My friends, particularly my best friend, Chloe, started to notice how much I was struggling. Chloe, a fiery, no-nonsense artist who ran a small gallery in the Marigny, saw through Marcus's games much faster than I did. She'd come over to my shotgun house, bringing a bottle of cheap wine and a sympathetic ear. "Maria, you're letting him mess with your head," she said one night, watching me pace my small living room. "He cheated on you first, end of story. Your texts, while maybe not ideal, were a reaction to his betrayal. He's flipping the script and you're letting him." "But I feel so guilty, Chloe," I confessed, sinking onto the worn sofa. "He makes it sound like I'm the one who broke everything." Chloe snorted, pouring me another glass of wine. "That's exactly what he wants you to think. He wants you to feel guilty so you'll keep chasing him, keep trying to fix it. It's classic manipulation, honey. He wants to have his cake and eat it too. He wants you there, available but on his terms, always feeling like you owe him." Her words were a stark, cold splash of reality. I hated hearing them, but I knew, deep down, she was right. Every time he pulled me back in, only to push me away again, I felt more drained, more exhausted. I was neglecting myself, my work, even my peace of mind, all because I was caught in his confusing web. The lowest point came a few weeks later. Sophia had a school play, and Marcus had promised he would come. Sophia was so excited, talking about it for days, practicing her lines with me. I was nervous, but also hopeful. Maybe, just maybe, seeing Sophia perform, seeing us together as a family, would remind him of what we had. Maybe it would break through his carefully constructed wall of hurt. I bought Sophia a beautiful little dress, and I even picked out a new blouse for myself, wanting to look my best, wanting to present a united front for our daughter. We arrived at the school early, found good seats, and waited. And waited. The play started. Sophia, looking like a tiny angel in her costume, bravely delivered her lines. My heart swelled with pride, but my eyes kept darting to the door, searching for Marcus. He never came. After the play, Sophia, still beaming, looked up at me. "Where's Daddy?" she asked, her voice innocent but with a tiny edge of confusion. My chest tightened. He must have gotten held up at work, sweetie. He's so sorry, I'm sure." I hugged her tight, feeling the lie burn in my throat. I pulled out my phone. No calls. No texts, nothing. I took Sophia home, tucked her into bed, and then sank onto my own bed, the new blouse still on. I stared at the ceiling, tears silently tracking paths down my temples. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Sophia. He was hurting her, even indirectly. He was using her, using my love for her to maintain his control. I finally checked my phone. A text from Marcus, sent an hour after the play had already begun. "Sorry, Maria, couldn't make it." Too much on my mind. Just can't bring myself to face you after everything." The words were a calculated blow, perfectly designed to make me feel guilty, to make me responsible for his absence, for Sophia's disappointment. It was his way of punishing me, of reminding me that my actions had consequences, even if his own were far more damaging. He had pushed me to the very edge, and I felt utterly broken. Lying there in the dark, the humid New Orleans night pressing in around me, I felt a shift. Not a big one, not yet, but a subtle hardening in my heart. The guilt was still there, a dull ache, but it was now overshadowed by a cold, burning resentment. This wasn't about love anymore. This wasn't about fixing things. This was about power, about control, and Marcus had been wielding it like a weapon. I was tired of being his puppet. I was tired of feeling small and worthless. He had brought me to my knees, made me question my worth, made me feel like I deserved this confusing, painful limbo. But as the first hints of dawn began to paint the sky outside my window, a new thought began to solidify in my mind. He thought he knew his place, he said. But maybe, just maybe, it was time for me to show him his. And it certainly wasn't going to be by my side. The weight of his manipulation, which had crushed me for weeks, now felt like a spring being coiled, ready to release. The coiled spring inside me tightened with each passing day. The soft, confused Maria was slowly, painfully, being replaced by a woman with a clearer vision, a woman tired of being played. Chloe's words, my own dawning realization, and most importantly, Sophia's tear-filled eyes after the play, had cemented a new resolve. I wasn't going to let Marcus define my worth or dictate my emotional state anymore. He thought he knew his place, but he was about to learn a very different one. My first step was to create distance, real distance. The constant phone calls and texts were a leash he used to yank me back whenever I tried to stray. I started by not answering every call. When he texted, I would wait hours, sometimes a full day, before sending a brief, unemotional reply, usually about Sophia's needs and nothing more. No more "I miss you too," no more engaging in his pity parties or his victim narrative. He noticed, of course. Marcus was far too attuned to control to miss the subtle shift in my responses. The calls became more insistent, the texts more frequent, laced with a new urgency that betrayed his growing frustration. "Maria, why aren't you answering? Is everything okay with Sophia?" Or the classic, "I'm worried about you. Are you purposefully avoiding me?" I found strength in his irritation. It meant my new strategy was working. One afternoon, he called me 5 times in a row. I let it ring. Then he texted, "Maria, this is childish. We need to talk." I took a deep breath, my fingers hovering over the keypad. This was it. This was where I drew a firm line. I typed out a message, carefully choosing each word. "Marcus, we have nothing to talk about beyond Sophia. When you want to discuss her, call or text. Otherwise, I need space, real space." I hit send, my heart thumping against my ribs. It felt like I'd just declared war. His reply came swiftly, a volley of anger. "Space. You want space? After everything I've done for you? After I've tried to understand your pathetic insecurities? You're unbelievable, Maria." I didn't reply. The old Maria would have crumbled, would have started to explain, to apologize, to fall back into his manipulative dance. But not anymore. I just put my phone down and walked away, letting his words hang in the air, knowing they had no power over me if I didn't give them any. This newfound strength, however, didn't come without its own battles. The guilt still gnawed at me, a persistent little worm in my gut. He had a way of making me feel like a bad person, an ungrateful partner. Even as I actively resisted him, his voice, his accusations, were still echoing in my head. Chloe became my anchor during these turbulent weeks. She'd listen patiently as I recounted Marcus's latest attempts to reel me back in, offering practical advice and, more importantly, unwavering support. "He's losing his grip, Maria," she'd say, her dark eyes sharp with understanding. "That's why he's lashing out. Don't fall for it. You're doing great." But Marcus wasn't one to give up easily. He knew my weaknesses, and he wasn't above exploiting them. If he couldn't get to me directly, he'd find another route. And that route, I quickly realized, was Sophia. One morning, after I dropped Sophia off at school, I received a frantic call from her teacher, Ms. Dubois. "Maria, I just wanted to let you know that Sophia's father came to pick her up today. He said you had an emergency and asked him to. Is everything all right?" My blood ran cold. "He what?" I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. "No, Ms. Dubois, I didn't. I never asked him to pick her up." A pause, then Ms. Dubois' voice, now tinged with concern. "Oh dear. He showed up with a note purportedly from you saying you were ill. It looked convincing. He said he had power of attorney in case of emergencies." Power of attorney? He had forged a note? My mind reeled. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. This was a direct, calculated attack using my daughter as a pawn. He was trying to assert his control, to punish me for pulling away, and he was doing it in the cruelest way possible. "Ms. Dubois, I'm on my way," I said, my voice tight with a mixture of fear and white-hot rage. "He has no right, I'm coming to get my daughter." I drove like a woman possessed, the short distance to Sophia's school feeling like an endless journey. My heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat in my ears. When I burst through the school doors, I saw Sophia sitting quietly in the principal's office, looking small and confused. Marcus was there too, lounging casually in a chair, a smug look on his face. Caught my eye, and a flicker of challenge, almost triumph, passed between us. "Maria, there you are," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "I was just telling Ms. Dubois that you must have forgotten about our agreement. I told you I'd pick Sophia up on Tuesdays." My jaw clenched. "We had no such agreement, Marcus, and you forged a note. This is unacceptable." My voice was low, but it vibrated with a barely contained fury. Ms. Dubois, a kind woman with silver hair, looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Rodriguez, Maria is Sophia's primary guardian. We need to clarify these arrangements immediately." Marcus just shrugged, a picture of nonchalance. "Just trying to help out, you know? Maria's been so stressed lately. Thought I'd take some of the burden." The audacity of it. He was twisting it, making it sound like he was doing me a favor, that I was the one who was stressed and unreliable. It was a public performance, designed to make me look bad, to make me feel helpless. But looking at Sophia's anxious face, I knew I couldn't let him win this. "Sophia, honey," I said, bending down to hug her tightly. "Everything's okay, Mommy's here." I glared at Marcus. "You will never, ever do this again. You want to see Sophia, you arrange it with me and only with me, and you certainly don't try to take her out of school without my permission." His smile faltered, replaced by a sullen pout. "Fine, Maria, be that way, always making things difficult." He stood up, his posture radiating annoyance. "I was just trying to be a good dad. Some people don't appreciate it." He walked out, leaving a trail of his self-righteous indignation in his wake. Ms. Dubois apologized profusely, explaining their protocols. I assured her it wouldn't happen again and immediately set up new safeguards with the school, making it clear that only I, or someone I had personally authorized in writing, could pick up Sophia. That incident with Sophia lit a fire in me, turning my simmering resentment into a full-blown inferno. He had crossed a line, a sacred boundary. My daughter was not a tool for his games. The cold, burning anger solidified into something harder, something more dangerous. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about protecting Sophia. I started documenting everything. Every call, every text, every incident. I bought a small notebook and filled its pages with dates, times, and summaries of his manipulative attempts. I started researching, too, quietly, late at night after Sophia was asleep. I looked up legal resources for parental rights, for restraining orders, for anything that could shield us from his increasingly desperate attempts at control. My world, which had once felt so vibrant and colorful, now seemed tinged with a constant gray anxiety. I was always on edge, always anticipating his next move. At the bakery, I'd catch myself staring out the window, wondering if he was lurking, if he'd try something else. My coworkers noticed my increased tension, the dark circles under my eyes. I pushed through, baking bread, decorating cakes, my hands moving mechanically while my mind raced. The scent of yeast and sugar, usually comforting, now felt like a thin veil over a churning storm. Even Chloe, my steadfast confidant, started to look worried. "Maria, he's escalating," she said one evening as we sat on my porch, the humid New Orleans air buzzing with cicadas. "You need to be careful. What's your next move?" My next move. The question hung in the air, heavy and significant. I had been reacting, defending, building walls, but I hadn't launched an offense. Not yet. He continued his subtle harassment. He'd show up at the bakery, ostensibly to buy something, but his eyes would be on me, a possessive, challenging gaze that made my skin crawl. He'd send flowers to my house, anonymously at first, then with a card simply stating, "Thinking of you," a chilling reminder that he knew my address, that he was watching. The worst part was the fear. The fear that he would do something else to Sophia, something I couldn't anticipate or prevent. The fear that he would show up at my work and cause a scene, jeopardizing my job. The fear that I would never truly be free of him, that he would always be a shadow lurking at the edges of my life. One particularly bad day, after he'd made an unannounced appearance at the bakery, staring at me until I felt like I was under a microscope, I came home feeling utterly defeated. I looked in the mirror, and I didn't recognize the woman staring back. My eyes were dull, my shoulders slumped. I was thin, worn down by the constant emotional warfare. He was winning. He was slowly, systematically destroying me, making me feel like I was losing my mind. I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, the raw grief and exhaustion finally overwhelming me. Sophia, hearing my cries, came into my room, her small face etched with concern. She climbed onto the bed and wrapped her arms around me. "Mommy, don't cry," she whispered, her voice so innocent, so pure. Her embrace, her simple words were a jolt, a cold splash of reality. I couldn't let him do this. I couldn't let him turn me into a shadow of myself, not for Sophia's sake. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw the strong, resilient little girl I was raising. I had to be strong for her. I had to fight back, not just to protect her, but to show her what true strength looked like. Lying in bed that night, Sophia asleep beside me, I stared at the ceiling, the humid air heavy around me. The fear was still there, but beneath it, a new feeling was taking root, a cold, calculated anger that was unlike anything I had ever felt before. He had pushed me to the brink, to the absolute lowest point. He had tried to break me, to make me his puppet. But what he didn't realize was that in doing so, he had awakened something fierce inside me, something he would soon regret. I had been playing defense, reacting to his moves. It was time for offense. It was time to show him the real Maria Rodriguez, the woman who was not to be messed with, especially when it came to her daughter. The revenge wouldn't be loud or dramatic. It would be quiet, precise, and utterly devastating. And it would start with taking back my narrative, my dignity, and my peace. And then I would make him pay for every tear, every moment of fear, every stolen piece of my life. The plan began to form, a slow, intricate weaving of threads in the quiet of the New Orleans night. It would be a revenge story written not in anger, but in cold, hard determination. And I, Maria Rodriguez, would be the author. This was the turning point. This was where I stopped being the victim and started becoming the architect of his downfall. The first step in my quiet war was to gather allies, or at least information. I couldn't fight Marcus alone, not if I wanted to win decisively. He was a master of perception, always making himself out to be the victim, and I needed to dismantle that carefully constructed facade. My best friend, Chloe, was the obvious first choice. She had been my rock, and her clear-headedness was exactly what I needed. "Chloe," I said, meeting her at her gallery during a slow afternoon. The vibrant chaos of her art splashes of color and bold brushstrokes seemed to mirror the storm brewing inside me. "I'm not just going to distance myself anymore. I'm going to make him regret everything." Chloe looked at me, a slow, understanding smile spreading across her face. "Finally, what's the plan, warrior woman?" I laid out my thoughts, disjointed at first, but gaining coherence as I spoke. The documentation, the research, the shift in my own mindset. He uses Sophia to get to me. He uses my guilt. He uses his hurt as a weapon. I need to take all those weapons away. Chloe nodded, her eyes alight. "And how do you plan on doing that?" "First, I need to understand his finances," I said, a flicker of an idea sparking. "He's always been vague about his work, about how much he makes. He claims he's doing well, but he's never offered to contribute much financially to Sophia or to me, even when we were together. He always had an excuse." This was a critical piece. Marcus loved to talk about his success, but his actions rarely matched his words. I remembered small things, how he'd always let me pay for dinner, how he'd conveniently forget his wallet, how he'd always promised to pay me back but rarely did. It was all part of his charm, his way of making me feel like I was helping him, supporting his vision. Chloe, ever practical, offered a suggestion. "You still have access to his old laptop, right? The one he used to leave at your place sometimes. What about old bank statements, tax documents? Anything he might have carelessly left digitally?" A memory clicked. Before we truly broke up, Marcus had indeed left his old, clunky laptop at my place for a few weeks, claiming his new one was too fast for his creative work. I'd mostly ignored it, but I knew the password. Dee told me it once, ages ago, during a moment of supposed trust. It was something simple, his favorite sports team and a birth year. A pang of guilt, a whisper of invasion of privacy, tried to surface, but I quickly squashed it. He had invaded my privacy, my trust, my daughter's safety. This was simply evening the score. That night, after Sophia was tucked in, I retrieved the dusty laptop from the back of my closet. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed in the old password. It worked. The screen flickered to life, a portal into Marcus's world. My heart pounded with a mix of trepidation and grim determination. I felt like a detective, digging through old files, searching for clues. It took hours, long into the humid New Orleans night. I found old emails, some from his family, a few from what looked like past employers. There were no hidden caches of money, no secret accounts. But there was something far more revealing. Buried deep in an old document folder, among what appeared to be drafts of a never-finished screenplay, were a series of loan applications. Small loans, personal loans, credit card applications. Each one painted a picture of someone constantly trying to stay afloat, not a successful, burgeoning businessman. And then I found it. A collection of old pay stubs, scattered across different folders from different, seemingly short-lived jobs. He wasn't a hotshot marketing consultant, as he often claimed. He was a low-level sales associate, a part-time delivery driver, a gig worker, jumping from one poorly paid job to the next. His income was meager, barely enough to support himself, let alone contribute to Sophia's upbringing. The chasm between his self-proclaimed success and his actual financial reality was vast, a gaping wound in his carefully crafted image. A cold, hard realization settled in my gut. He hadn't cheated on me because he was confused or because of a mistake. He had cheated because he was desperate, always looking for someone to prop him up, someone to fall for his charming illusions. He needed women like me, who earned a stable income, who had their lives together, to fill the gaps in his own chaotic existence. My text to other guys, while born of insecurity, had been the perfect smokescreen for him to pivot, to make himself the wronged party, to deflect from his own deep-seated issues. He hadn't been angry, he had been relieved. Relieved that he had an excuse to distance himself, to not have to pretend anymore, to escape responsibility without looking like the bad guy. The anger, cold and precise, now mixed with a sense of clarity. This wasn't personal for him, it was purely transactional. He saw me as a means to an end, a temporary comfort and stability until the next opportunity came along. He was a parasite, and I had been a willing host. No more. The next morning, I called a lawyer. A family friend recommended a woman named Elena Perez, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney with a reputation for fighting tooth and nail for her clients, especially mothers. Her office was in a stately old building in the Garden District, the scent of old wood and legal tomes filling the air. Elena listened patiently as I recounted the entire saga, from his initial cheating to his manipulative distancing, to the forged note at Sophia's school. I presented her with my meticulously kept notebook, the dates, times, and summaries. I even shared the information I'd found on his laptop, detailing his inconsistent employment and low income. She leaned back in her chair, her gaze sharp and assessing. "Maria, this is a clear pattern of harassment and parental alienation. Forging a note to pick up your daughter is a serious offense, and his financial instability will be a major factor in any custody or child support proceedings." Child support. The words hung in the air. I had never pushed him for it, partly out of a misguided sense of loyalty, partly because I didn't want to cause more conflict, and partly because I honestly didn't think he had much to give. But now, seeing the full extent of his deceit, the thought of him getting away with contributing nothing to Sophia's life was infuriating. "I want full custody, sole decision-making for Sophia," I told Elena, my voice firm. "And I want child support. Whatever he can legally pay, I want it. I don't want him to have any more control over our lives or to use Sophia as a pawn ever again." Elena nodded. "We can build a strong case, Maria. Given his past actions and your documentation, I believe we can secure full custody and a reasonable child support order. It won't be easy. He'll fight it, especially if it means revealing his true financial situation. He'll try to paint you as unstable, as vindictive." "Let him try," I said, a new resolve hardening my voice. "I'm done being his victim. He thinks he knows his place. I'm about to show him his real place in court as a deadbeat dad trying to manipulate his way out of responsibility." The legal process was slow, a grinding machine that moved at its own deliberate pace. But with each step, I felt a little lighter, a little more in control. Elena sent him official letters, notifying him of my intent to pursue full custody and child support. His reaction was exactly as predicted, furious. His text became a torrent of abuse. "You're crazy, Maria, you're going to ruin everything. How could you do this to me, to Sophia?" He tried to call, but I let them go to voicemail, listening to his increasingly desperate and angry messages. He even showed up at the bakery again, but this time I was ready. "Marcus," I said calmly, stepping out from behind the counter, my voice low and even. "My lawyer has informed you of my intentions. Any further communication must be through her, or it will be considered harassment." I met his gaze, unflinching, my eyes reflecting a quiet power he hadn't seen before. He blustered, his face reddening. "Harassment? I'm Sophia's father, you can't just cut me out. You cut yourself out, Marcus, when you put your needs above hers, when you lied, when you manipulated, I replied, my voice unwavering. Now, if you don't mind, I have customers. He stood there for a moment, stunned by my composure, by the brick wall he suddenly faced. Then, with a frustrated huff, he turned and left, but not before I caught a glimpse of genuine fear in his eyes. He was losing control, and he knew it. Chloe noticed the change in me. "You're shining, Maria," she said one evening, after I'd recounted the bakery incident. "It's like a weight has been lifted." It was true. The constant anxiety was still there, a low hum, but it was now overlaid with a sense of purpose. I was fighting, not just for myself, but for Sophia, for our future. The discovery of his true financial state also opened another door to my quiet revenge. Marcus was obsessed with his image, with appearing successful and charming. He cultivated an online persona of a creative entrepreneur, always on the cusp of his next big deal. He'd post carefully curated photos on social media, expensive-looking drinks he couldn't afford, art gallery openings he'd bluffed his way into, vague references to exciting new projects. I remembered him bragging about his connections, his investors, the deals he was always working on. It was all a house of cards, built on illusions and my financial stability. If I could expose that, even in a small way, it would be a devastating blow to his ego, to the very foundation of his self-worth. I started small. I used his own tactics against him, but with truth as my weapon. On a local New Orleans community forum where Marcus often posted vague self-promotional messages, I saw him soliciting seed funding for a revolutionary new app concept. He wrote a lengthy, flowery post about his vision, his passion, his guaranteed returns for early investors. It was all hot air, I knew. Instead of directly confronting him, I posted a seemingly innocuous question. "Hey Marcus, didn't you mention a similar app idea a few months ago? Whatever happened to that? And are you still working at? Just curious." The response was immediate and furious, not from Marcus publicly, but in my private messages. "Maria, what are you doing? Are you trying to sabotage me? This is insane." I replied coolly, "Just asking questions, Marcus. Transparency is important, especially when asking for investments. Wouldn't you agree?" He quickly deleted his original post from the forum. My small, public jab had hit its mark. It wasn't a knockout blow, but it was a clear warning. I was no longer afraid to call out his lies, and I was doing it in a way that chipped away at his most prized possession, his carefully constructed image. This was just the beginning. I knew he would retaliate, escalate. He wasn't one to back down when his control was threatened. But I was ready. I had Alina, I had Chloe, and most importantly, I had Sophia. And for us, I was prepared to fight. The quiet war was just getting started, and I, Maria Rodriguez, was ready to win. The old guilt was a distant echo, replaced by a steely resolve that felt like the heart of New Orleans itself, resilient, unyielding, and fiercely protective of its own. The legal battle, though slow, eventually reached its inevitable conclusion. With Alina Perez's sharp legal mind and my meticulous documentation, Marcus's carefully constructed world of illusion came crashing down. He had no real defense against the evidence of his manipulation, his financial instability, and his egregious act of forging a note for Sophia. In the end, the judge's ruling was clear and unequivocal. I was granted full custody of Sophia, with sole decision-making authority. Marcus was ordered to pay child support, a sum that, while modest given his true income, would still be a constant, undeniable reminder of his responsibilities and a significant burden for his precarious finances. His visitation rights were strictly supervised, contingent on him attending counseling for parental alienation. He tried to protest, to charm, to manipulate, but it was all useless. The court saw through his act, and the law, for once, was firmly on my side. As I walked out of the courthouse that day, the New Orleans sun felt different, brighter. The humid air, usually a heavy embrace, now felt like a gentle caress. I wasn't just walking away from a legal victory, I was walking away from the suffocating grip of Marcus's control. He had tried to break me, to make me doubt myself, to turn my own insecurities into weapons against me. But in doing so, he had forged me into something stronger, something more resilient than I ever thought possible. My revenge wasn't a grand, dramatic scene. It was quiet, precise, and utterly devastating to the man who thrived on illusion. His image, his perceived success, his control over me all were shattered. He was left with the cold, hard reality of his own making, a struggling man, legally bound to a child he rarely prioritized, and stripped of the power he so desperately craved. As for me, Maria Rodriguez, I found peace in the quiet rhythms of my life. Sophia thrived, her laughter once again filling our shotgun house with unburdened joy. The bakery flourished, my focus sharper, my creativity renewed. New Orleans, with its vibrant chaos and deep-rooted resilience, felt like home again. I had faced the storm, and I had emerged not unscathed, but undeniably stronger, a testament to the fierce, protective love of a mother and the unyielding spirit of a woman who refused to be broken. I knew my place now, and it was firmly in control of my own life, my own story, and my own powerful future.